Hey guys, what's up? So last time we were able to set up Django, we were able to create our project using PP and View. So now we are going to go ahead and start by finding a way of adding Bootstrap to this project. So first thing that you have to do if you are to configure static assets, you need to tell Django where to look for your static assets. That's one. And also your templates. Come to the settings py file. Django automatically ships with the templates backend that it uses. Now we need to configure the DAS, the directories where Django should look. For us, we are going to create a folder right in our root called templates. And this is where I need to create a folder. So folder templates. Okay. Need to get rid of this. So we're going to create a folder called templates, and we need to tell it has to be in the root of the project. Then we need to tell Django to look there. So the OS Python comes with the OS module that can easily help us to locate where the templates folder is located. So we can do os.path .join. Then we have this variable here called base URL. So base that basically looks at the absolute path to where the current file is. So .join, then we pass in the base there. Then we want to look for a folder called templates in our project directory. So that's first step. Missing white space, that's fine. So once that is done, also I want to go ahead and run these migrations. Basically, when you install Django comes with default migration setup. For example, the migrations for the authentication model that Django ships with, the sessions and all other stuff that are related to Django. So we need to first migrate them. So we run Python manage.py migrate. That's migrate all the tables, and then let's also remember to initialize git. So git init here, create a project. I'm going to check out to another branch for project setup -p project set up. So we'll be working in here. So once we locate the templates, the next thing we need to do is locate the static assets. So to tell Django where to look for the static assets, we got the installed apps. Django ships with the static files app, and this basically helps us to manage those static files, but we need to kind of tell it where to look for those static assets. So it sets up a static URL, but we also want to add another configuration for static files does. So this is a list of directories that Django is supposed to look in for all the static files. We are going to still use the OS module, OS path join, to locate where the static will be. So base there, we'll create a folder called static, and that's where static. Okay. So this should be a folder, and we need to create it also, just like we did with templates. Static should be in the root. Make sure that's where it is. So in here we can create our folders for CSS, for JS, and then for images. Okay, cool. Just go with img. That's quicker. So now we need to now install Bootstrap. So much as we can do that, we need to have a way of adding it to our project. And one of the things we do that is we create a file called base.html in our templates, and this kind of acts as our wrapper for all our HTML templates. So here I'm going to create a boilerplate for an HTML page. Then I'm going to call it our auth app. the title. And then with Django, one of the first things you need to do is load static. So load static basically gives us ability to read the static files that will be in the static folder. So you need to add that. So load static should be the first line. So from there, we need to go ahead and here we need to determine where all the other content will lie. So in here, we are going to add these tags. Then we are going to add a block for our main content. So add block content. Then we need to end the block. So end block. So this means that, so this is not spelled correctly. So this means that all our other content will be embedded in here, meaning they will have to inherit all these and then this one here. So we are going to be able to manipulate things like the title from the other pages that will inherit from this base. But then what's more important is they can inherit all the styles. So I'm going to get the Bootstrap CDN quick. Bootstrap CDN. Well, let me just get the files. So Bootstrap actually. So if we go to the website, clicking download, it's going to download. It should download. Let's click download again. Okay, so download. So it downloads Bootstrap 4.3.1. Now here, we need to expand it. Go into the CSS. We need to copy out bootstrap.css. So I'm going to move it. I'm actually going to, okay, so bootstrap.min. Let me open it from here. So this is it. I'm going to copy out everything. So in the CSS, I will create a file called bootstrap.css. And then I will put everything there. So we also have our main CSS file where we will override all the Bootstrap CSS and where we write our customizations. So now in the base HTML file, we can now link to our CSS. So in here, we need to use the static keyword, and that will basically give us a path to our static files. Then now we can tell where we want to get to CSS. Then it's going to be called bootstrap.css. So okay, so now that should be done. Let's get, so yeah, I think that's it. So let's create a template for, okay, so I feel like that should be it. I'm going to add an h2 here. Then I'm going to write welcome. So if you run the project again, manage py, run server. Now it runs correctly. If you go to the browser, it's still not looking here. So what we are going to do is we are going to set up an endpoint, or we are going to set up a route for registration. But one of the first things that we are going to first do is create the registration template. So I'm going to create a folder called auth, and this will contain all our templates that are related to authentication. So I'm going to create register.html. Okay. So from here, we need to extend the base template. So here we need to extend the base template. This should be the first line, so it extends, then it's called this.html. Yeah, okay, so we need to create a block for the content, but we also need to use to link to our static files, so we can also put the load static tags, load static, not to forget. Then we put block like this, tag syntax, block content. So this should be what we call it in here. So block content, then we need to end block. Okay, so once that's done, now in here we can put our markup. So register here. So now that we've created this, we also need to create a view for it, a view and then a URL. So to create a view, we need to create an app now for our authentication. So to create an app basically is a way that Django organizes its related functionalities. So if you have a functionality to do with authentication, you can create an app code for authentication, and then you put all the related functionalities. If you have like CRUD for something like blog posts, you can create an app for blog posts, and then it manages just that. So to create an app, you're going to use Django admin. So it's you actually need to do Python manage.py start app. Let's call it authentication. So it's important you don't call it auth, because Django has an auth app built in. So call it authentication. So when you run the command, it creates this new folder. So in here we have all our template files for the app. So first thing we need to do is to register this app, so to tell Django about it. So I need to go in the installed apps, and then we put a path to the apps file, so which is here. So it's in authentication apps, then this is the class name. So we write it as authentication, then apps, that's a file, then the class name. So that way Django can know about it. So next thing we need to do is define a view. So in views.py, we are going to be using class-based views in these videos, because they are really easy to use and set up. So to use them, we are going to import them from Django views. I think we need to get from generics, yeah, generic import. We're going to move it to import a generic class called view. So for the registration, we're going to create a class called registration view. Then we inherit from view. That's going to give us all the capabilities of Django views. So now to handle a get request, you do def, then get. That's a keyword. You have to call your function that one, then person self, and then the request object. So in here we can now return. We're going to use this class here called render. So we do return render. Now render returns, as you can see, a request, then a template name, then the context. So and then status and the content type. So the request is required, and then the template name is required if we are returning it. We are using render. So the request, basically we throw in the request that we have, then the template name, we put above the template. So we've already told it to look in the template, so we need to just do auth/register.html. The context can be none. So yeah, so that should do. So now we need to configure a URL route to this view. So I'm going to create a file called urls.py, and this is going to handle all our URLs for the authentication app. So to work with URLs, we're going to import some utilities from Django. So Django.urls import, we're going to import path. So we define a URL patterns, and this should be a list. So this can be a list of different paths. So now the first one is going to be register, and now register is going to go to this view that we've created. All the request methods will be handling. We need to determine them here. So we need to import those views. So views, import views. Okay. Import views. Now here, since we are handling the registration, you can do registration view. We need to call as view, just so Django knows that they are views. Then we need to give them a unique name. We can use this one to reverse and get an absolute or a relative URL for this path using some Django utilities. And Django basically uses this to do some things with the routes. So you need to give it a unique name, and it should be unique across all your routes, otherwise it's going to crash. So from there, we need to tell our Django to know that these URLs exist. And if you go to our urls.py, project urls.py, we need to import the utility called include. Now, after the admin, we can add another path. So this path is going to be, we can just leave it at that, but then it's going to always map out to what we add here. So include. Now in the include, we can put a path to our urls.py, and that can be authentication URLs. Okay, cool. So yeah, so now I believe we are set. Our application is still running fine. If we run it, we can see that we have this URL registered. So let's add a /register, and then that renders our template. I notice that our Bootstrap is not coming through. That's mainly, I think it's because we didn't do something correctly. So while telling Django where to look for the static files, this should be static files does. So yeah, so save it and then reload. Now you can see that it's picking up Bootstrap. So we are well on our path to success. So anyway, so now let's go ahead and design our registration page. Now I'm going to move in some assets, for example this logo here. Actually, I'm just going to copy it out from here. So copy image address. That's fine. In here, in the registration, we are kind of going to see how we can create this. So with Bootstrap, we can actually tell that if this is a row with 12 columns, then this is equal to this, then it's equal. With Bootstrap, we're going to create a row, and then we are going to divide it into these columns. Some of the rows we want to be having content. So in here, let's create a div with the class of row. So inside, we'll create 3 divs. We'll call -md. Let's give them 3. Okay, 3. And let's use this shorthand to create 3 divs. Then the middle one, I'm going to make it use 6. And then the other ones will be kept empty. So inside here, we can create our form. But if you still look at this, so this is 6, but then this doesn't look like 6. It's kind of divided also. So we are also going to divide it. So we're going to create another row inside. And then we're going to create, so let's just create a row. Inside we're going to create call md 2 3 times. So now this basically takes up 6, but meaning we have 8 here, 8 left. So now we can write our forms inside this area. So we're going to use Bootstrap cards. Now to use a card, you write a div with a class of card. So from there, let me just go to the Bootstrap website. Could just get something real quick. Okay, I just need to go to documentation, so cards, and then if I can scroll through, I can basically pick out this. So I'm going to copy this out. So copy, then I will replace with my card. So now in here, I'm going to move this inline styling. Then this is going to be a link to our image for the Instagram app. Just now copy it again, copy image address, so bring it in. Okay, so from there now we can replace this title with these words. Okay, let's close it. With these, sign in to see photos and videos from your friends. Okay, there, move the paragraph. Now we need to join this button for login with Facebook. I'm just going to make it really simple. Actually, you can even use this. So button primary, I'm going to say login with Facebook. Okay, so this button here is somehow small, so we're going to use a utility class for button SM to make it small. Let's see how that looks. So if we come back and then reload, we have this not so bad. Let's make this one go through from the start to the end, and then we can do that by doing btn block. That will take off the whole video, take over the whole video. If we reload, see it takes over. So also our image comes through, but we need to pull it from the top. We can do that by adding some margin on the card. So empty, give it 5. So 5 is like the highest ones in those utilities. So it kind of does what we want. This one here, the text, if you notice, this one is kind of grayed out. And to get that kind of effect, you can add text muted utility class to actually get that effect. So if we reload again, yeah, so we have that effect. Now we need to get font awesome, just that we can use the Facebook icon. Awesome CDN. I'm just going to come here. Okay, this is version 4.7. So we bring it to our base HTML. Put it here. Okay, so in our register now, before the text, we can add our icon. So I for class equals FA dash Facebook. So let's see if this actually works. If we reload, you can see we have an F. I'm going to leave it to that, and just because I'm not sure about the exact icon, this was just guessed. It's because in the original I was using font awesome 5 and I couldn't just find the CDN very quick. But we'll move from there. So now let's go ahead and put this O. So still with Bootstrap, we are going to just keep manipulating the grid system. Outside the A, after the A, we need to now create this here. So if you can tell, this is a row, and then it has like 3 items. So we can just do that. So row here. Now I'm just going to say call. Okay, see. So this is longer, then this is also longer. So meaning we can do MD 5 times 3, and then change this one to 2. So in the middle we can add that word O, and then in these two we can basically add the horizontal rules. So just in the first one and the last one, add horizontal rules, save it, go back and see what we have. So we have the effect. Pretty interesting, right? We should push it down a bit and then change this one to be muted. Okay, I can do P here. It's muted. And move all inside. So then I believe we can zoom left. Okay, so if we see this one starts from where the button ends, but then it leaves some space here. We check. Yeah, so everything looks fine. If we reload, we have that. If we want to add some margins around, let's leave it to that. Design isn't like the biggest part of this. So now let's build these input fields. So in here after the A, we need to go inside the card body. We need to have our form. Okay, so just skip the action. The method is going to be post, and then The first input field is going to be for the email. So with Bootstrap, you need to wrap all your input fields into something called a form group. So class called form group. So form group. So all fields need to have a class of form control. So in here we can have our input field. So this should be an input field, not a div actually. So input class equals form control, type will be email. Then the name, we need a name, very important to have a name. So the name for this one will be email, and then let's start off the value as nothing. Then the placeholder, because we don't have labels, we can have placeholders. So email. So save that. If we come back to our app, reload it, and we have this link here. So this is big. If you can look at this, so to make it a smaller one, basically need to add a class called form control sm. So that will give us a small version of that, as you can see. So good. I'm going to copy this and then replicate it for the other ones. So the second one is going to be type text. Basically, most of so type text. Then the name is going to be name. Then the placeholder, full name. Then the next one, type is going to be text. Then the name is going to be username. Then the placeholder is going to be username. Okay, cool. So this one, the type is going to be password. Then the name is going to be password. Then the placeholder, password 2. So we also need the confirm password field. So this is going to be password 2. Then the name can be password 2. Then the placeholder can be confirm password. So we need a button to submit, and we can just get that by input type submit. Then we need a value for this. So submit. So let's just say register. Then I feel like that's so. So let's save that. We need a class. With Bootstrap we can use btn, so btn sm, such that it's small. Then let's call it btn below, such that it stretches over. Okay, I wonder what's going on here. So save that, then let's reload, and we have our form designed properly, but our button is basically not taking off, not having our style. So we need it to have this kind of style. So we need to give it a class also. So btn primary. So save that, reload, and then we set. So also notice that on our form we have this here, this kind of text to tell a user that they need to agree to our terms. We can just do that. Let's just create a paragraph. Let's give it a class of py3. That will give us some padding. Save it. Actually, I'm just going to use small so that they are really small. So small. So save. Hopefully it will look good. So save it. Okay, that's fine. Now let's create the form down. This one here, this link to go to the login page. So down still. Okay, so outside here, it should be outside the card. So to tell where the card stops, hopefully it's here. We'll find out. So you can create input type. Oh no, can create a div with a class of card. So in the card body, we can have a paragraph that asks for already have an account. Already have an account. Then do login. So login is going to be a link, so we need to put an A, we need an href, then so we need an href, then we need to do login here, then we can close out our A. To save that, so if you come back, there is our app and reload, we can see that we have our link to the login page, but it's kind of stuck to the registration form, so we can add a margin on the top. We just give it that. We reload, we have our design. So well and good. Now let's start seeing how we can submit this form. So to submit the form, one of the first things we need to know that Django needs all the forms to be safe from cross-site request forgery. So that's one of the attacks that attackers usually do, and the way Django solves that is by providing us with a security tag called RF token. So you need to add this. That tag is compulsory for all the forms you handle in Django, so you need to have that. Then the action, we are going to submit the same URL, meaning so to tell the URL that we want to submit to, we are going to use a URL helper, and then we put the unique name that we configured in the URL. So now, since the method is post, now if we come to the application, in the views, we need to define the post handler. So we need to also do post, then we have to add self and request also. So to basically pick the data that the user is submitting, so I'm going to just come and add data here. We just get that from request.post. Yeah, so we'll get the data. It has to be capital. So we'll get the data, and then let's also go back to the same template. So render, just going to copy this. Come back here, copy, paste. So render, request, then auth register. So here, I'm going to print out this data to see if actually it comes through. So data. So now if we go to our application, reload it, just fill in the email, username, password, confirm. If we click send, we are basically brought back to the same page. But if we check our print, we can see that the data is coming through. So well and good. So now we want to be able to retain the data that we add in when we submit it and we have like errors. So to retain the data, I'm going to see how we are storing the request data in data. Now we can still send this data in the context. So context can be arbitrary data that the templates can use. So we need to send it also. So we can do context. Okay, we can just do context equals, then let's just do data. Let it be the data. So that's one of the things we are passing in. So we want to use this to set out the values such that a user can retain the data that I submitted earlier. So in the view, for where we have views, we can use this syntax here to add data. Since it's a dictionary, we can use email. Okay, let's see. Data email, is it a dictionary? Let's see how that works. So if we reload, no, it's not. So it has to be data. There's email. Then let's do reload. Let me just do Then we go back, let's put an email, submit. Notice that now we retain our email. So very good. So we'll do the same thing for the other fields. So this is going to be name. This is going to be username. So this is going to be, so for the passwords, let's just leave them. Yeah, so because the user won't be seeing them anyway. So if we add test, history, submit, we retain these values, so which is good. So now we are going to go into flash messaging to actually display problems to the user when they have them. And to do that, we are going to, let me just come back to the view. To do that, Django ships with a messaging app. So if we go to our settings, you can realize that we have the messaging processors here, context processors, and then in the installed apps we have the messages app. So Django uses cookies and sessions to store these messages across requests, and for us to use them, they are basically configured to display different types of errors, different types of messages. So messages can be like errors, they can be success, they can be logging messages, they can be info messages, they can be debug messages and all that stuff. But let's see how we can use the messages. So in the view, go to Django.contrib.messages, then import messages. It's actually from Django.contrib import messages. Let's just import it from here. Import messages. So now here we are going to check if the data does not contain an email. So email should be request.post, then we can do .get. Since it's a dictionary, we can call email on it. So to check the value of the email, we can basically write a redirect expression to find that, but to find if the email is valid. But I'm just going to use one of the modules, external modules. I'm going to install validate email. Okay, so let that install. So once it's done, we can import it. So from validate email, import validate email. Yeah. So now here we can do a check. So if not validate email, then we pass in our email, then we can tell the user that the email is valid. So to add a message, a fresh message, we use the messages module we've imported. So messages, then we call, we call function called add message. So add message takes in a request, so we can provide it with the one we have, request, then the level, so we can use messages, then we call messages. Then now since this is an error, we can do error, then we have to do a message itself. So email, so we can tell you that to provide a valid email. So please provide a valid email. Okay, so then this should be enough. This should do. Okay, so we can do other checks. Let's check if passwords. Let's check if passwords are provided. So password was request, post, get password. So let's get password 2. Just going to copy this. So password 2 equals password 2. Okay, let's fix the indent. Let's do a check. So if password, we can do basically like a len, if len password is less than 6, then we can just add a message. Okay, so we can basically do like passwords should be at least 6 characters long. But basically you can handle this stuff the way you want to handle them. But let's just do one more check. So let's check for if 2 passwords are not equal. So if password is not equal to password 2, then we can also say passwords don't match. So one of the other things we need to check for is if the email is not taken. So to check if the email is not taken, we can do that by, we can just do a check against the user model. So to use the user model, we're going to use a built-in one. So from Django contrib.auth.models import user. Okay, so to find out if a user exists, we can do if user.objects.filter, then we give it an email equals the email that we are getting, then we call exists on it. So if it exists, then we can now add a message that email is taken. We'll do the same thing for the username. So copy that. Username. So let's fix the indent. Username is taken. Oh, fine. We are moving. Now I want to be able to go back to the template with this. Otherwise, I want to be able to create the user. And the only way I can be able to do that is by keeping a variable reference that tells me that there are errors or not. So here, I'm just going to create a context, and I'm going to embed this in the context. So data, since we are already using data down, I can just keep it. And let's undo here. I'm going to add a variable called has error. It's going to start out as false. But now here I can now send the context only. Okay. So now when we have errors, I want to update this field from context has error. I'll set it to true. Same thing, I'll repeat this for the other checks. Just put it down. Okay. Similar checks here. Has error true. Same thing here. Fix the indent. Fix the indent here. And here. So now we want to check. So we want to check if there is an error. So if context has error, So this will, if it's true, then it will pass. So if it has error, then we want to render this template. Okay, with the errors. Otherwise, we want to create the user. So to create the user, we do it by using the user model that we imported. So we can do user equals user objects create user, and then the compulsory parameters have to be username. So username equals username. Let's see, username. Did we create the username? No, we didn't. So let's have that. Username have to be username. We did the check also here. Correct. So it has to be username. Then the password can be none. But what we are going to do is pass in an email. It can also be none, but since we have it, we can pass it. So after that, now we can set the user's password. So user, we call set password explicitly, and this is what enables the hashing to take place. So set password, then we pass in the password. So now from there, we can so from there we can now set the other attributes. So user dot, we set the first name. We're going to set it to our name, our full name attribute, which we get from, let's also set it actually. So full name, can pick it from name. So first name will be that. So I'm just going to repeat it for the last name, but you can do a check and maybe split out spaces and then save differently. But I'm just going to keep it the same since we don't have those restrictions. So yeah, so from here you need to, so the way we are going to make it work is we don't want users that have not verified their emails to be able to log in. So what we are going to do now is also set them not to be active, because by default they will be active. So that is active, it will be false. Okay, so from there now we can save the user by doing user.save. So user.save will save the user, and from there now we can tell them they have successfully created an account by basically adding this message. But this one is going to be a success. So account created successfully. So here I'm just going to also add a status. Oh, this is a message. The account added successfully, and then we are going to redirect to the login page. So to redirect, we need to import redirect from shortcuts. So redirect, here we can do return redirect to a unique path. So we're going to call it login, and we are just going to quickly replicate the URLs. So this one, fix this. It's going to be login. We're going to create a view called login view. Login view real quick in the views. So class login view, that's in view. Let's do a get request. Self request, and then we return render. Just copy it here, render. So render, this is going to go to login.html, Now I'm going to just copy out this one. So copy, see if I can paste it. Then I rename it to be login. Then I can now change out everything in the form to keep only the password. Okay. Let me just get rid of everything. We'll fix it later. Okay. Yes, I don't want to make a mistake here. I'm just going to add an H2 to show that we are on the login page. Just for testing. So I'm going to run my server again. So if we run it, reset has no. Let's start afresh. Let's go to register. Let's click register, and it's unable to query for this, which means, let's see. Let's see. Saying query set has no attribute exists. User the project. Let's take a look at our error real quick. So what we're going to do now is find another way of doing this. I'm going to use a get here. So get will throw an error, a not found error, if it doesn't find the object that matches this. So we are going to wrap this in a try except block. So try except such that our code doesn't actually crash out. Okay, so let's just do. Okay, so fine. So this can go in the try. So meaning if if the email exists here, then we tell them that the email is taken. So that's fine. We can just put a generic exception here as E. Okay. So we do the same thing for this. Just copy it, paste, replace this inside here. So username equals username. So let's also remove this, push this one to the indent level, and try. If we come back to our app, I'm going to reload it. Oh, so we are at this side. If we go back to our register, clicks. If we go back to our register and then click register, notice that it comes back. If we put an email, but then our messages are not being shown. So the way we are going to show the messages is by adding a template to which they can show. So in the register.html, up above the form, we are going to do. So since we are importing messages in the class, we can be able to get those messages, and the way we can do that is we're going to first check if the messages are there. We have messages, so let's end if then inside we need to look through the messages. So for message and messages, then now in here we need to end the for. So end for here. So in here we're going to display div. It's going to have a class of alert, then let me just say alert danger. This is a bootstrap class. Close it. Then inside we can now show the message itself. Message. Okay, so if there are many, we are going to look through them, and for each of one of them, we'll show an alert. Okay, so let's see. Let's try it out. Reload it, and you can see we get all these. These are too many. Let me. Okay, let me reload again. Let's start it out fresh. So let's go to register. Then let's add that. Test username, password. Let's just put passwords that don't match. We see that passwords don't match, meaning everything is working. If we put an email that's not valid, even our HTML won't let us submit it. So good. Let's see. We can add a password. If we add passwords that match, it tells us account created successfully, and then it redirects to the login. If you can see in the URL. So doesn't look like it's redirected, but I just think that we didn't save the login. So if we can save here, and let's get rid of the whole form. Okay, just slowly. Where does the form stop? So form up to here. So if we clear it away, let's make sure the view sends to the correct. Yeah, it does. Let's check the URL mapping for the. Okay, so that's fine. So yeah, so let's reload and see. So yeah, now it works fine. So let us test it one more time. Go back to the registration. Use the very same email. Let's see if our checks work. So if we try to use the same details, notice it tells us that the email is taken, the username is taken. If we check our console, it's giving us 200, but it should be some other error code. So to fix that, I'm going to show you how to do just that in a minute. The register template, register view, y. So when we render, when we have an error and then we render, we can pass in a status. So status, let's put in like bad request from the user. Then, so yeah, so now if we do that, get those errors, and then we can see that it's a 400. Thanks guys for staying around. I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. If you're new here, please like and subscribe. In the next video, we will go ahead and add tests for this and actually make sure it's going to work correctly, and maybe fix some other validations that we didn't actually fix. So see you guys in the next video.